Your observer breath isn't working because you're unconsciously broadcasting the frequency of what you don't want. Most people think they're observing from neutrality, but they're actually observing from the vibration of lack, creating a quantum feedback loop that manifests more absence. Now, the issue isn't that the observer breath technique is flawed, or that quantum manifestation doesn't work, or that you're not spiritual enough. It's that you don't understand the hidden frequency layer that determines what you actually manifest. Most people focus on mental observation while completely ignoring their emotional broadcast signal. That's exactly why today I'm going to reveal not just why your observer breath has been attracting the opposite of what you want, but I'll give you the exact frequency calibration protocol that shifts you from unconscious sabotage to magnetic manifestation in just 5 seconds, plus the cellular memory release technique that rewrites your energetic template permanently. There are 2 types of observation. 99% choose the one that repels their desires. I want to share something with you that took me years to understand, and when I finally got it, everything changed. You see, most of us have been taught that observing our situation is simply about looking at what's happening around us. We glance at our bank account, notice our relationship status, assess our health, and think we're being objective observers. But what I've discovered through my own journey and working with thousands of people is that there's a profound difference between what I call contaminated observation and pure observation. Contaminated observation happens when we look at our circumstances through the lens of our fears, doubts, and desperate wanting. It's like trying to see your reflection in a stormy lake. The image is distorted by all the emotional turbulence beneath the surface. When you observe your current reality while feeling anxious about not having enough money, you're not just observing your financial situation. You're broadcasting the frequency of scarcity, and that energetic signature becomes part of what you're putting out into the world. Let me paint a picture that might feel familiar. You wake up on a Monday morning and immediately check your phone. Maybe it's your bank balance, or you scroll through social media seeing others' highlight reels, or you look at your empty calendar feeling worried about your future. In that moment, you think you're simply gathering information, being realistic about where you stand. But what's actually happening is much more complex. Your nervous system is responding to what you're seeing with a cocktail of stress hormones. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your shoulders tense up. Your heart rhythm becomes erratic. And from this state, you're not just observing. You're participating in creating more of the same energy. You're unconsciously reinforcing the very patterns you want to change. This is what I mean by contaminated observation. It's observation mixed with emotional reactivity, filtered through old stories and limiting beliefs. When you observe from this place, you're not receiving clear information about your reality. You're projecting your internal state onto everything you see. Pure observation, on the other hand, feels completely different. It's like being the calm, still center of a spinning wheel. When you observe from this place, you can see your circumstances clearly without your emotional state coloring the experience. You notice what is without immediately jumping into stories about what it means or how you should feel about it. I remember the first time I experienced pure observation. I was going through a particularly challenging period in my life, and I was in my usual pattern of anxiously checking and rechecking my situation, trying to figure out how to fix everything. Then something shifted. I took a breath and simply noticed what was happening without the familiar panic rising in my chest. It was remarkable. The circumstances were exactly the same, but my relationship to them transformed completely. From pure observation, you're not trying to change what you see. You're not judging it or fighting it. You're simply witnessing with compassion and curiosity, and something beautiful happens in this space of neutral witnessing. You stop feeding energy to the patterns you don't want, and you create room for new possibilities to emerge. The quantum field, scientists tell us, responds to the observer's state of consciousness. When you observe from contamination, from fear, lack, or desperate wanting, you're collapsing possibilities into more of the same limitations. But when you observe from purity, from a place of open, neutral awareness, you're allowing the field to show you what's truly possible. Here's your first breakthrough insight. Right now, take 3 breaths and simply notice. What emotion are you feeling as you observe your current situation? Don't change it, just become aware of it. This awareness alone breaks the unconscious contamination pattern. You've just taken your first step toward pure observation. Notice how different it feels to observe with awareness versus getting lost in the emotional reaction to what you're seeing. This simple shift in how you witness your life is the foundation of everything we'll explore together. But there's something deeper happening that most people never discover. You think you're observing neutrally, but you're actually broadcasting emotional frequencies 24/7. What I'm about to share might surprise you, and it certainly surprised me when I first discovered it through my own experience. We've talked about the difference between contaminated and pure observation, but there's another layer that most people never realize exists. We're constantly broadcasting our emotional state to everyone around us, and this broadcast is happening whether we're aware of it or not. Think of yourself as a human radio station. Every emotion you feel, every internal state you experience is being transmitted outward like invisible waves. When you're feeling anxious about money, that anxiety doesn't just stay contained within your thoughts. It ripples out through your posture, your breathing, the way you speak. Even the way you hold your phone when you're checking your bank account. I learned this the hard way during a period when I was struggling financially. I would sit in coffee shops supposedly working on solutions, but I was actually broadcasting desperation. I didn't realize it at the time, but other people could sense my energy. Conversations felt strained. Opportunities seemed to slip away just when they looked promising. I thought I was being professional and composed, but my emotional state was telling a completely different story. Here's what's fascinating about this unconscious broadcasting. Your emotional state doesn't just influence how others respond to you, it actually shapes what you're able to perceive and receive from your environment. When you're broadcasting scarcity and worry, you unconsciously filter your observations through that lens. You notice the problems more than the possibilities. You see the obstacles more clearly than the openings. Your emotional state becomes like a template that your thoughts fill in. If you're feeling worried about your future, your mind will dutifully find evidence to support that worry. If you're broadcasting impatience about your manifestations, you'll notice all the ways things aren't working rather than the subtle signs that change is beginning to unfold. I remember working with someone who couldn't understand why their attempts at positive thinking weren't working. They would say all the right affirmations, visualize their desired outcomes, and genuinely believe they were doing everything correctly. But underneath all those positive thoughts, they were broadcasting a frequency of doubt and urgency. Their nervous system was in a constant state of alert and scanning for what might go wrong. The truth is that your emotional frequency is much more powerful than your thoughts. While your mind might be saying, "I trust the process," your heart might be beating with anxiety, your shoulders might be tense with worry, and your breathing might be shallow with impatience. This emotional undercurrent is what's actually being transmitted to the world around you. This isn't about judgment or making yourself wrong for having difficult emotions. It's about awareness. When you begin to recognize that you're always broadcasting some kind of emotional frequency, you can start to choose more consciously what you want to put out into the world. True observation requires what I call emotional mastery. Not the suppression of difficult emotions, but the ability to be aware of what you're feeling without being overwhelmed by it. When you can observe your circumstances while maintaining emotional equilibrium, you're not just gathering neutral information, you're creating space for new possibilities to enter your awareness. The beautiful thing about becoming aware of your emotional broadcast is that you realize how much influence you actually have. Every time you take a breath and soften your shoulders, you're changing what you're putting out into the world. Every time you choose curiosity over anxiety, you're shifting the frequency you're broadcasting. Here's a game-changing realization you can use immediately. For the next 24 hours before every important conversation or decision, pause and ask yourself, what frequency am I broadcasting right now? Then take one conscious breath to shift into curiosity instead of anxiety. Watch how people respond to you differently. This simple shift will start changing your external reality within hours. You might notice that conversations flow more easily, that opportunities present themselves more naturally, or that solutions appear where you previously saw only problems. This isn't magic. It's the natural result of changing what you're unconsciously communicating to the world around you. Once you master this awareness, ancient wisdom reveals a powerful secret boot. Hidden in your heart rhythm is a 5-second window for frequency recalibration that ancient Sufi masters called breathing with the heart of creation. Now we come to something truly beautiful that I discovered during one of the most challenging periods of my life. I had been practicing the awareness we've talked about, recognizing my contaminated observation patterns and becoming conscious of what I was broadcasting. But I still felt stuck in the same emotional loops. I would catch myself in anxiety, recognize it, but then struggle to actually shift out of it. That's when I learned about what feels like a secret doorway hidden in plain sight, the natural pause that exists in your heart's rhythm. You see, your heart doesn't beat in a perfectly regular pattern like a metronome. It has a natural variability, moments where it speeds up slightly and moments where it slows down. Within this rhythm, there are brief windows where everything seems to pause, and in those moments, something magical becomes possible. The mystics understood this phenomenon intimately. They discovered that by synchronizing their breath with their heart's natural rhythm, they could access states of profound peace and clarity that seemed impossible just moments before. They called it breathing with the heart of creation because, in those synchronized moments, they felt connected to something larger than their individual struggles. What I've learned through my own practice and scientific research is that when you breathe consciously for about 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, something remarkable happens in your nervous system. Your heart rhythm begins to smooth out into what scientists call coherence. In this state of coherence, your heart, mind, and emotions begin to work in harmony instead of pulling in different directions. But here's the part that changed everything for me. In those 5-second intervals, especially during the pause between your inhale and exhale, there's a window where your usual mental chatter naturally quiets down. It's as if your thoughts are so busy following the rhythm of your breath that they temporarily forget to run their familiar anxious patterns. During this brief pause, you have access to a different way of perceiving your situation. Instead of observing what's missing or wrong, you can gently shift your attention to what might be emerging or becoming possible. It's not about forcing positive thoughts or trying to convince yourself everything is fine. It's about creating a momentary space where you can glimpse your circumstances from a calmer, more expansive perspective. I remember the first time I really experienced this shift. I was worried about a difficult conversation I needed to have, and my mind was spinning with all the ways it could go wrong. Then I tried this 5-second breathing pattern, placing my hand on my heart as I did it. During one of those quiet pauses between breaths, instead of seeing the conversation as a problem to solve, I suddenly saw it as an opportunity for deeper understanding. Nothing about the external situation had changed, but my entire relationship to it transformed. This isn't about escaping from reality or pretending challenges don't exist. It's about accessing a state of inner stability from which you can engage with your life more skillfully. When you're in this coherent state, you're not reacting from old emotional patterns, you're responding from a place of clarity and presence. Here's your powerful 5-second technique. Breathe in for 5 seconds while placing your hand on your heart and thinking, I am grateful for what's emerging. Breathe out for 5 seconds thinking, I trust the process. Do this 3 times right now. You've just recalibrated your frequency from lacking to receiving. Use this whenever you feel frustrated with your manifestations. Notice how your body feels different, how your thoughts have more space around them, and how your perspective on your current situation may have gently shifted. This technique works beautifully, but there's an invisible obstacle blocking most people. Your nervous system has been storing disappointment frequencies for years. Here's how to clear them. Something I've noticed in my own journey and in working with others is that even when we learn to observe more clearly and calibrate our emotional frequency, there are still moments when old patterns seem to have a life of their own. You might be practicing the heart-centered breathing, feeling genuinely peaceful and aligned, and then something happens. A bill arrives, a conversation doesn't go as planned, or someone cancels plans, and suddenly you're right back in that familiar emotional spiral. For the longest time, I thought this meant I wasn't doing the practices correctly, or that I wasn't spiritually evolved enough. But what I came to understand is that our nervous systems are incredibly sophisticated learning machines. Every significant emotional experience we've had, especially the disappointing ones, creates what I think of as an emotional template, a pattern of physical and mental responses that gets activated when similar situations arise. These templates live in our bodies as much as in our minds. When you think about that time you trusted someone and they let you down, notice what happens in your chest, your stomach, your shoulders. Your body remembers not just the facts of what happened, but the entire emotional landscape of that experience. And here's what's fascinating. When current situations even remotely resemble past disappointments, your nervous system activates those old response patterns before your conscious mind has even figured out what's happening. I remember working with someone who couldn't understand why they felt anxious every time a potential romantic partner seemed interested in them. Logically, they wanted love and connection, but their nervous system had learned from past heartbreaks that excitement and hope often lead to pain and rejection. So even though they consciously desired partnership, their body was broadcasting caution and withdrawal whenever things started to go well. This isn't a flaw in your system. It's actually your nervous system trying to protect you based on what it's learned from past experiences. But sometimes these protective patterns end up creating the very outcomes they're trying to prevent. When you unconsciously brace for disappointment, you may inadvertently communicate distance or unavailability, which can indeed lead to the rejection you're trying to avoid. The beautiful thing about understanding these emotional templates is that they're not permanent. Your nervous system created these patterns through experience, and it can learn new patterns through different experiences. This is where conscious breathing becomes particularly powerful, not just for shifting your present moment state, but for gently rewiring these deeper patterns. When you breathe consciously while experiencing a triggered emotional state, you're essentially giving your nervous system a new experience. Instead of the old pattern of anxiety leading to more anxiety, you're creating a pathway where anxiety can transform into curiosity, where disappointment can evolve into wisdom, where fear can soften into openness. I've found that this process requires patience and gentleness with yourself. These emotional templates didn't form overnight, and they don't dissolve overnight either. But each time you respond to an old trigger with conscious breathing instead of unconscious reactivity, you're literally creating new neural pathways. You're teaching your nervous system that it's safe to respond differently. What's particularly beautiful about this process is that as you clear these old emotional patterns, you begin to perceive your present circumstances more clearly. When you're not constantly filtering your experience through old disappointments, you can recognize genuine opportunities when they appear. When you're not bracing for betrayal, you can be open to authentic connection. When you're not expecting failure, you can take inspired action toward your goals. Here's your cellular reprogramming exercise. Think of one disappointment that still triggers you. Now breathe slowly while thinking, "This experience taught me what I truly value." Feel the shift from victim to wisdom. You've just transformed cellular memory from limitation into empowerment. This technique works on any past disappointment. Your nervous system is already beginning to rewire. Notice how the emotional charge around that memory may have softened, and how the story you tell yourself about what happened might have gently evolved. When this clearing happens, you unlock something extraordinary. When observer and desire match frequency, manifestation becomes inevitable. What I'm about to share represents a profound shift that happens when everything we've explored so far begins to work together. You've learned to recognize contaminated observation, become aware of your emotional broadcasting, discovered the calibration window in your heart rhythm, and started clearing old emotional templates. Now something beautiful begins to emerge, what I experience as a state of inner coherence where your entire being aligns around what you genuinely desire. This coherence feels completely different from wanting or trying to attract something. When you're in a state of wanting, there's always an underlying tension, a sense that you're separate from what you desire. You're over here and what you want is over there, and you're trying to bridge that gap through effort, visualization, or positive thinking. But coherence dissolves that sense of separation entirely. I remember when this shift first happened for me. I had been working with a goal that felt important, but somehow always remained just out of reach. I would make progress, then face setbacks. I would feel hopeful, then disappointed. It was exhausting. Then one day, while practicing the heart-centered breathing we explored earlier, something changed. Instead of feeling like I was trying to attract this outcome, I began to feel as though I was already the person who naturally experienced this kind of success. It wasn't a mental trick or a visualization exercise. It was as if my entire nervous system reorganized itself around a different truth. My posture shifted. My breathing deepened. The way I spoke about my goals changed. Even my daily actions began flowing from a place of confidence rather than anxiety. This is what I mean by coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and physical presence all align around the same inner knowing. When this happens, something remarkable occurs in how others respond to you. People begin to see you differently, not because you're trying to impress them or convince them of anything, but because you're emanating a different quality of presence. I've noticed that when I'm in this coherent state, conversations unfold more naturally. Opportunities appear through unexpected connections. Solutions emerge that I couldn't have planned or predicted. It's as if the universe begins organizing itself in harmony with your inner alignment. This isn't about forcing anything or manipulating outcomes. In fact, it's the opposite. When you're truly coherent with your desires, you stop trying to make things happen, and instead allow them to unfold through you. You take inspired action rather than forcing action. You remain open to how your goals might manifest rather than being rigidly attached to a specific path. The shift from trying to attract to simply becoming is profound. When you're trying to attract something, you're constantly monitoring whether it's working, looking for signs, feeling frustrated when progress seems slow. But when you're being the person who naturally experiences what you desire, there's a sense of ease and trust. You know that your inner state is creating the conditions for your external reality to shift, even if you can't control exactly how or when. What's beautiful about this coherent state is how it affects everyone around you. When you're genuinely aligned with your desires, not desperately wanting them but peacefully knowing them, others can sense that stability and authenticity. They naturally want to support you, collaborate with you, introduce you to people who might help. It's not manipulation or strategy. It's simply how life responds to coherent presence. Here's your coherence activation. Choose one thing you've been trying to manifest. Now, instead of wanting it, spend 2 minutes breathing while feeling grateful that it's already unfolding perfectly in divine timing. Notice how this feels completely different from desperate wanting. You've just entered coherence with your desire. This feeling state is your new manifestation frequency. Pay attention to how your body feels more relaxed, how your thoughts about this goal have shifted, and how your sense of urgency has transformed into patient knowing. This coherence naturally evolves into the ultimate mastery state. Pure observation doesn't try to manifest. It allows reality to match its frequency. We arrive now at what I consider the most beautiful state of all, a way of being that feels both completely natural and absolutely extraordinary. When you've integrated everything we've explored together, something effortless begins to emerge. You stop trying to create your reality and instead become someone through whom your desired reality can naturally express itself. This shift feels like stepping into a version of yourself that's been waiting patiently for you to remember who you truly are. It's not about becoming someone different or better. It's about releasing all the layers of effort and anxiety that have been covering up your natural magnetism. I think of it like this. Imagine you've been trying to push a heavy boulder up a hill for years, using all your strength and willpower. Then one day you realize you can simply step aside and let the boulder roll down the other side of the hill, carrying you effortlessly toward your destination. This is what happens when you shift from trying to force outcomes to allowing them to flow through your aligned presence. When you're in this state, your desires stop feeling like something you need to chase or capture. Instead, they feel like natural expressions of who you're becoming. If you desire deeper connections, you find yourself naturally being more open and authentic in conversations. If you desire financial abundance, you discover yourself making decisions from a place of trust rather than scarcity. If you desire creative fulfillment, you notice yourself drawn to activities and opportunities that feed your soul. What's remarkable about this effortless presence is how others respond to it. Have you ever met someone who just felt peaceful to be around? Someone whose very presence seemed to make everything feel more possible? That's what happens when you stop broadcasting need and start emanating fulfillment. People are naturally drawn to that quality of contentment because it's so rare in our anxiety-driven world. From this place, your actions arise from inspiration rather than desperation. Instead of forcing yourself to network or promote yourself, you find genuine conversations and connections unfolding naturally. Instead of anxiously checking your progress toward your goals, you discover yourself taking steps that feel both meaningful and enjoyable. Instead of constantly trying to control how things unfold, you develop a deep trust in your ability to respond skillfully to whatever arises. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop taking action. In fact, your actions become more effective because they're aligned with your authentic desires rather than driven by fear or urgency. When you move from this centered place, you tend to make decisions that serve your long-term well-being rather than just providing temporary relief from anxiety. The paradox of effortless magnetic presence is that the less you grasp for what you want, the more naturally it seems to appear in your life. This isn't because you're manipulating some cosmic force, but because you're no longer unconsciously sabotaging yourself through desperate energy and conflicted emotions. Here's your magnetic presence practice. For the rest of today, move through your activities as if you already are the person who has everything you desire. Not fake it. Just breathe from that place of inner fulfillment. Notice how opportunities, conversations, and synchronicities begin appearing naturally. You've just activated magnetic presence, your most powerful manifestation state. Pay attention to how differently people respond to you when you're emanating contentment rather than need, and how your own decision-making shifts when you're operating from fulfillment rather than lack. Now let me give you the complete practice system that makes all of this automatic. So we've uncovered why your observer breath has been working against you. Contaminated observation, unconscious emotional broadcasting, stored cellular memories, and lack of frequency alignment, plus the exact path to transform this into effortless magnetic presence. And you've already experienced 6 powerful shifts just by listening. Take a moment to acknowledge how far you've traveled in this short time. You began by discovering that there are 2 completely different ways to observe your reality, and that most people unknowingly choose the one that reinforces their limitations. You became aware of the emotional frequencies you're constantly broadcasting and how they shape every interaction you have. You learned about the sacred 5-second window in your heart rhythm, where genuine transformation becomes possible. We explored together how your nervous system has been faithfully storing every disappointment as a protective template, and you discovered how to gently transform those old patterns from limitations into wisdom. You experienced the profound shift that happens when your inner state aligns completely with your desires, creating what I call coherence, that beautiful state where you stop trying to attract what you want and start becoming the person who naturally experiences it. Finally, you touch the ultimate mastery state of effortless magnetic presence, where your very being becomes a magnet for the experiences and opportunities that align with your highest good. This isn't about perfecting yourself or never experiencing challenges again. It's about developing an unshakable center from which you can navigate whatever life presents with grace and wisdom. What moves me most about this work is that each technique you've learned serves as both a doorway and a foundation. Every time you pause to notice what frequency you're broadcasting, you're not just changing that moment, you're strengthening your capacity for awareness in all future moments. Every time you use the 5-second heart breathing to recalibrate your state, you're building your ability to access inner peace whenever you need it. What would your life look like if you never again had to struggle with anxious observation of your circumstances? What would become possible if you could shift your emotional broadcast from scarcity to abundance in just 5 seconds anytime you chose? How would your relationships, your career, your creative expression evolve if you consistently operated from that magnetic presence we explored? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're invitations to a way of living that's available to you right now. The journey from where you are to where you want to be isn't about acquiring something new. It's about remembering and reclaiming capacities that are already within you. Remember, the observer effect only works when the observer vibrates at the frequency of what they're observing into existence. You now have the tools to match the feeling, not just the thinking. You understand that your emotional state creates the template that your thoughts fill in. You know how to access the calibration window in your heart rhythm. You've experienced what it feels like to transform old disappointments into wisdom and to align completely with your desires. Start with the techniques you've learned today. Trust the process. Be gentle with yourself. And remember that every conscious breath you take is an act of creation.